Hello and welcome back to the boardroom. Today we are talking about eDive and how to run a meet on eDive. I'm Aaron Rooney, joined with Nate Brisley. Hello, sir.
Hello.
All right, well, we're going to get right into it. It's kind of going to be a crash course of how to create a meet in eDive. So if I go to my screen share button here, I'll show you guys what we're after. So on my desktop, I have this fun eDive window, and I'm going to try to get to my blank desktop so you can see what the icon looks like. Right over here on the left side, next to that handsome fellow wearing the diving pod shirt. Um, so when you click that button, this is what pops up, and this is our eDive window. Um, from here, where do you go? Where do you start? Right. So I go to this file. Basically from left to right is kind of the order of what you need to operate the system with. So if you go, from left to right, we're going file. What do we want to do? We want to create a new meet right there. So I'm going to click that button and you got to enter your name. Let's say it is the boardroom test. Whoops. And we're going to have the meet today. National Federation of High School Rules. It ends today. Then you have to enter your judges. Most high schools, you're going to enter 3 judges for a dual meet. Hopefully 7 for a championship meet. Sometimes you can do 5 if there's just not enough judges. I always prefer to have 7. So, the highest 2 and lowest 2 get thrown out and you have the most accurate judging panel. So boardroom test.
Aaron, can you just take a look at the drop down for the judges?
Yeah.
And just so everyone's aware, if you scroll up, there is a formula for 2 judges, and that is National High School Federation compliant. And it takes all of the math and the current rules into consideration and does all of that for the judges. So if you're in a situation where you only have one team with divers or the other team's diving coach didn't show up, and it's the one diving coach and official, this is something that you're going to want to click because it takes all of the legwork out of the way for you.
There's also a lot of college programs that only use 2 judges and they just use both diving coaches. I've seen this happen tons of times. And then you can see the other ones, right? 5 judges, 7 judges, 9 judges, synchro diving. So this system can incorporate a bunch of different meets. But for our example, we're going to use a dual meet, 3 judges. Create meet. Your meet has been successfully created. You will now be prompted to select events to add to the meet. Awesome. So this window pops up and it says, all right, what events do you want to add? Well, Nate and I talked beforehand and we were going to do forward voluntaries. So for that argument's sake, we're going to have a boys 6 dive voluntaries front required. So this 1V50, that's 1 voluntary, 5 optionals, front requirement on 1 meter. So we click this add button and it goes over here. This label is pre-populated high school boys varsity. If you were to have a JV, you would simply click this button again and rename one of them JV. So I do that a lot. And then later, you can combine the event JV and varsity so that they're all diving at the same time because that's just how high school works. So I'm going to remove this one and we're only going to use high school boys varsity just for argument's sake. Add these new events and close. Awesome. Your event has been added to your meet. So now we've created a meet. We've created the events. What's next? It's getting those dives entered into those events. So right now we have no data. We have no diving sheets. We have no nothing. So how do you get it? Well, eDive, the software, there is an online portion to this where you go to edive.com and at the very bottom it says resources and it says email entries and it gives you how to enter your entries to this system. And you go in and it says, okay, let's do it. Why not? I think my computer might freak out. I'm using a very old
I think this is good. Going with this is if you go to eDive, you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and then you click email to entries, all you have to do is type in some information about you as the coach, and then it'll prompt you for the next page in terms of their name. And then all you have to do is type in their dive numbers, if it's a voluntary or an optional, which Aaron is going to show us here in just a second. And then you click add diver. And that's the really important part. And a new feature that eDive recently added, and I think this is so amazing and valuable, is when you send the entries off, it sends a copy of the email to you. And then it also sends it to the Meet host, where before it would just send an email to the Meet host and you had to follow up with them to make sure that things were getting to where they needed to be. And they've removed that step, which is kind of an administrative nightmare on the coach's end. But now it just pops up within about 30 seconds on your email.
It works great. So my website was wrong. It's eDive.info. You can see that at the top. So again, you scroll all the way to the bottom, and this is the one thing I wish they would change about their website. This resources right at here. There's a DD calculator and then email entries. I'm hovering over it right now. It's a tiny little button, very easy to miss, but that's the button you click. So you go to this page, you enter your name, your email, team, host email, meet name, all the fun stuff. Let's see if I can do this quickly. Look at that. It pre-populated a whole bunch of stuff because I've used this computer a lot for eDive. Now, next step, enter your divers and their lists. Let's go with Crew Mache. There's a pre-populated list. Again, yours probably won't do this. Yours will have all blanks in here. And you have to go in one by one and enter 103B and the voluntary for round one, because our meet we just set up is forward requirement. So let's go 105C, let's go 403, let's go 203, let's go 303, and let's go 5132, and I'll just delete the rest of these.
I got to say, I like your grouping of categories, some common denominator to go from round 1 to 2. I do the same thing. Maybe that can be another video for future.
Yes. So you click this green button that says add this diver, and then it asks you, do you need any other divers, right? But at the bottom, you can see the current divers that you have in there, okay? So this is where you just add all of your divers. And again, once you're all done, you hit send my entries. I'm not going to do that just because I know this is not what we're looking for, but this is just how you submit your entries to any meet that runs through eDive. My meet host email is my own email. So I get two emails. I get my confirmation from me sending it, and then I get the confirmation that some team out there sent me entries as the meet host. So I'll get two emails on that one, but we already actually submitted a bunch of these lists. So now I go to these entries came in from Mr. Nate Brisley. And so I click this entries text file, I open it, and here's our list. Here's our divers. Here's what dives they're doing. So I'm gonna hit this little download button, and it's that easy. It's that simple. And then I'm just gonna leave that there because of entries right here. And so I'm gonna go to these entries, and I notice the names are different and the dives are different. I'm gonna download these as well. So I have two downloads entries right now. So we go back to our eDive and we say, well, what do we want to do? We want to import dives, and we're importing them from emailed entries from a website. So I click that, and I need to click the correct meet. And we labeled this the boardroom test. So there's our meet. You can see I have a bunch of different meets in there. I probably should clear some of this out so I don't stumble and put somebody in the wrong meet. But you have to pay attention. We're doing our boardroom test meet, and you need to select the event for what entries you're submitting. That's our high school boys varsity. We already set that up. It's a 6-dive meet, 1 forward voluntary requirement with 5 optionals. So here is this fun little button. You hit these 3 dots, and these 3 dots are importing a specific file. Okay, where do you want to import it from? Well, I put those entries in my downloads. And so there they are, 35 and 36. We talked about that just a moment ago. So I'm going to go with 35. I'm going to open that. It's going to pop up right here. I'm going to hit this import entries button, and there they pop up over there. Now, this is a part where I just hit close and I restart the process all over again. Importing entries from website, boardroom test, high school boys varsity. Again, I hit my 3 dots here. I go to my downloads. I hit number 36 because I already put in number 35. I open, I import entries, and there those entries are. I'm sure there's a way to import all of your entries at once. I just like to do it separately by team that sent them. It just kind of is a mental checklist for me. Okay, if I have a 8 school championship meet and I'm importing all these entries, I want to check off which ones I've done and which ones I haven't done because it's easy to get distracted and then I forget and then that's just a mess. Okay, so at this point we've entered all of our dive lists into our meet. So again, what's next? Now we can go to edit. We can look at dive sheets. That's one avenue to take. We can go to meets. We can go. What I like to do is I like to go to this events tab. That's my next tab that I go to. And if we're having JV and varsity at the same time, I go to this combine events tab. I click combine events. And this is not going to be a great demonstration of combining events because there's only one event in this meet. But you can create an event for JV and varsity, combine them together so that you're scoring it all at the same time. And that's where this shows up here. You hit create new combined event. A lot of times I just call it 1 meter diving. And then you'll have a JV event and it'll run at the same time as a varsity event. And then you can tweak your diving order to just put all the JV divers first. That's what we do. It's very simple. And maybe we can do that at a different time. But for our event, at this point, we need to register divers. And once you can see these little page breaks right here between edit event and combine event, and then between merge event and register divers. Once I have my dives in the meet, I go from here straight down. And so number 1 is register divers, 2 is set diver order, assign board ID, not really relevant for high school. Add and modify judges. Again, you can take that extra step and name your judges and then really get a judging profile on those people. I choose not to. And then the dive sheets as well. So again, top down, we're going to go register divers. What meet? Okay, this meet. And so if you can see on the left side there, we have a Nick Cage, a Cooper Brad, a Hawk, Brad Cooper, Tony Hawk. Good names there, my friend. I was Nick Cage, Brad Cooper. Okay, Tony Hawk, nice. Mark Jorgensen, nice. Okay, John Smith and Greg Tate. So all those divers have an R next to their name. That means they are registered for this meet. Okay. Now I want you to notice one other thing. If I click Nick Cage, this says his dive sheet has errors, which means the way they submitted this list does not fit the meet that we set up. So maybe instead of a forward voluntary, which is required, maybe they have an inward or a back, and you just have to tell that coach, hey, it's forward week. You submitted an inward first. What would you like me to do? And I always ask that. I don't try to change it for the coach. I just say, what would you like me to do? Here is the error. So if I click has errors, I can go to this edit dive sheet right here. I just right clicked. So I right clicked on has errors and you go to edit dive sheet and it'll bring you right to the sheet that was submitted. And look at that. This is one of my favorite buttons right here. You say has errors. If you click on that, it says dive in rounds 1 must be from category front. Oh, okay. It literally tells you what was wrong with this diving sheet. So you can go to that coach and you say, hey, it's forward week. What would you like me to do about their first dive? Oh, my bad. Let's do a 103C. So you can type in 103C and all of a sudden this list is now valid. Now, this is a very important step. You have to hit this save button. You have to hit save changes. Otherwise, those changes obviously are not saved. So I hit my save button. Changes have been made. Would you like to save? Yes. So now I'm going to exit out. And I just always like to double check. Okay. We were working on Nick Cage. All of a sudden, his dive sheet does not have errors, which is great. That's what we're looking for. So at this point, you can go through all of these dive sheets and look at the dive sheets and see what dives they're doing. Looks like Brad Cooper has a lot of degree of difficulty, 3.0, 3.1, 3.0. The wonderful thing about eDive is that first dive in the rule book cannot be above 1.8 degree of difficulty. And the reason is with 5 categories of dives, 1.8 multiplied by 5 is 9.0. And for an 11 dive list, your voluntary requirement is 9.0. That's why they do it. There's been many times where my divers will have, maybe it's twister week and they have 2 twisters that are over 2.0. We'll just take the degree of difficulty hit and then I will recalculate their scores with the proper DD so it doesn't throw off any of my spreadsheets. But the rule is this has to be 1.8 or less for the first dive for the voluntary. I think most of us know that, but eDive corrects it for you, which is wonderful. So if you wanted to go list by list, you certainly could. And you could, I guess, see what everybody was doing. Tony Hawk, I mean, he's probably a baller diver, right? He's doing some crazy stuff. Um, so a lot of pike dives there, legal list. You can go list by list if you so choose. But the big deal is to make sure all of the divers in our meet are registered and they all have that R next to their name. If for some reason they're not, you can make sure that they are. And you can also unregister a diver. You can cut a diver. You can mark as exhibition. All of that happens on this screen right here. So we have our divers registered. What's the next step? Again, I go back to my events tab and I just go in order of my events. So register was 1, set diver order is 2. So I click that button and none of these are in order. So I think in high school, the away coach has that choice of diver order. Frankly, I haven't had one away coach come up to me and say, I want my kid to go last or I want your kid to go last. It hasn't happened, but it is the away coach's right to choose that order. So if you want to start implementing that and doing that on your own, you have that right as the away visiting coach. For me, most of the time for a dual meet, I like to mess with my kids. And if somebody struggles under pressure, I'll purposely put them last. And if somebody's a really good diver, maybe I'll put them last. It doesn't really matter, but the best button here is just this randomize button. And I click that all the time. And let's say there's 2 Delano divers in a row and then 2 Middletown divers in a row. A lot of times I'll just do a little switch. I'll go 5 for him and then I'll go 4 for them so that it alternates team. I do that a lot for the 11 dive lists. I always hit random for an 11 dive list, and that's very important. That's required. There's a way to do it, I think by odd lot or whatever the rule book says about seeded. But a lot of times for 11 dive meets, coaches do not submit scores. So it can't be seeded if there's no score to seed with. So for 11 dive meets, I always randomize. Just that's what the rule book tells you you have to do if there's no seed score for every single diver. You can't just make up a seed score because you think they're a good diver and you want to put them last. So I always use that randomize button for an 11 dive list, and then everybody's happy. Nobody can complain, and it is by the book. It is by the rule book. But for a dual meet, I just make sure that the teams alternate and it ends up flowing nicely. So I'm going to save our diver order here. Okay, close. And what's next? We, again, go back to our events. We register divers. We set the order. We don't have to worry about the ID. We don't really have to worry about the judges for a 6 dive meet. Dive sheets, we've actually already checked them off. So you're at the point now where you can run an event. And this is the point where all of your housekeeping items are done. And so before you run the event, I like to do a little checklist of what do I need to print? And that's where you go to this reports browser. So this reports browser is going to be your go-to place for printing what you need to print. So what do you need to print? First of all, you need to make sure you're highlighted over the correct meet, that boardroom test, and you're going to highlight the proper events. If there's JV and varsity, both of those will show up as well as your combined event that you created. So make sure you're clicking that combined event to print the right paperwork. Otherwise, you're going to be missing things. You're not going to know why. So the things that I like to print, number 1 are the dive sheets. I'll hit preview report. It gives you how do you want to view this. You print scores and totals by diving order, the national, high school. You can then review report. Hopefully this pops up. And it shows you all of these diving lists. So here's Nick Cage. I click next. Here's Mark Jorgensen, John Smith, Greg Tate, Tony Hawk, Brad Cooper. So you have their diving lists. I print out these. I hand them to the correct coaches. I have the coaches and athletes sign them, and then I have them hand them to the referees for final checks. That's just what I do at my program. Nate, I know we talked about a little bit about this before we got on. What do you do at your place?
Yeah, so what I do, especially for a dual meet, I'll scroll down to the diver order with diving list, and then I'll have it be a checkbox where I can include, yep, there it is, a sign-off sheet. So if I'm not anticipating a lot of changes, I'll click that and then preview report. And some officials in the area, if the kids sign, the athletes sign that there are no changes right here, then we can just skip the diving sheet signing and go straight into the meet and run from this point. Probably realistically not going to work out very well for an invitational where there's 11 dives and there's errors in lists. So I would say use this with caution, because if you see errors in lists, you're not going to want to print this out right away. So, but what Aaron is saying in terms of what I print off, it is this page, post it right behind the boards, right before warm up. Divers can take a look. If they don't know their diving numbers, I'm standing right there and I'm giving them the description of each one of the dive numbers to make sure that they are indeed doing the right dives in the correct positions before I have them sign off. So offering that guided walkthrough for each one of these dives.
Yeah, and again, if your divers don't know the numbers and the letters of how diving works, that's kind of why I like to print the dive sheets. It's kind of nice on eDive. It actually types out what those dives are as well. So you have a 103C, it's a forward 1.5 somersaults tuck. So that's nice to see for the kids. But I love the diving order with lists. If again, if there are any changes that happen to dive lists, you should not print anything until all changes are done, because as soon as you print something and then there's a change, then you have to reprint everything. So the printing is the last step in everything. And just for argument's sake, let's have some fun. Let's say Brad Cooper needs to change a dive. So I'm going to go to edit dive sheet here, and Brad Cooper has really been struggling with his 405C and he wants to change it to 403B. That's very easy to change. Then you save his list. Dive changes have now been made. You want to save? Yes, I do. Now, and we look at dive lists, we should see Brad Cooper is no longer doing 405C, but instead he will be doing 405B. Where's Brad Cooper? I think he was the last diver right there. So you can see dive number 3 right there. It made that change. So it's very easy to make changes. It's very quick to make changes, but printing everything last. I've had a handful of meets, especially 11 dive championship meets, where a last minute change happens because the diver couldn't figure it out in warm up, and I had printed everything. And now all of that information that's printed is wrong, because in round 6, this diver is now going to do forward dive instead of forward 1.5. And if I don't make those printed changes, the announcer is going to say the wrong thing. The official is going to think a different dive is coming. And that's kind of on you, the meet host, for not really following through on one of those dive changes. And then, of course, the diver is going to be upset because they told you to make the change and the change didn't happen. And there's a whole laundry list of things. But eDive is very easy to make changes. Just make sure you're printing everything last. So we print our dive sheets. We print our diving order. I like to post that behind the board. You can do it with or without the diving lists. I love it with the lists, because if those people, those divers, they do know their numbers and letters, it's just a confirmation for them. Okay, in round 3, I'm doing 403B, and it says it right on the list. I like printing that one. And then the other one I print is this announcer's script. We're going to look at this just to see what it looks like. So it asks you, which rounds do you want to print? Yes, we want to print all rounds. And then this asks about visual guidelines. This is just cosmetic, and it really has no merit. You don't have to have visual guidelines, but I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to go every 2 divers just because we're going to preview this report. And here's what the announcer's script looks like. Divers in round 1, right at the top there. It's in order: Nick, Mark, John, Greg, Tony, and Brad. And it has all their round 1 dives, where they're from and what they're doing, their degree of difficulty, and the description. So I print 3 of these. I print one for the actual announcer, and they announce Nick Cage doing 103C, forward 1.5 somersaults tuck, 1.6. And I also print one for each of the officials. So they're able to have this in their lap as they're watching the dives. So they can kind of make a check mark and say, okay, yes, that is the dive that was announced. That is the dive that I saw. Feel free to score it as you see it, judges. There were no issues with that dive. Or if there was an issue, let's say in round 2, Tony Hawk did 105C instead of 105B. The official is going to be able to look at this piece of paper and say, well, it's listed as pike. That was very clearly done tuck. The rule book says when it is a completely different position than what's listed, you're not allowed to give higher than a 2. And that is the referee's decision and the referee's call. But they're able to look at this sheet and it's right in front of them saying, hey, I did the wrong position. My bad, but it needs to be scored accurately. So I like printing this for the officials. It really comes in handy for 11 dive meets as well. I mean, how many times have we been stuck in a judge's chair for maybe a 2-hour session and our eyes are starting to get a little heavy, and all of a sudden you see a back dive and you're not sure if it was Tuck or Pike and you're not sure what you heard, if it was Tuck or Pike. Well, having this sheet readily available to the officials, it's super nice and handy, and it just kind of makes everything flow. So at this point, we've created our meet, we've created our events, we have our divers, they're registered, we have our diving order, we've printed our lists, they've all been signed, we printed our diving order so everybody knows when to go, we printed our announcer's script so the announcer knows what they're saying, the officials, everything's good to go. We're at the point now where we're ready to go.
Let's run this meet.
This meet is ready to run. So again, we go to our events tab and we say run event. And it's going to ask you, which event do you want to run? I want to run our boardroom and I want to run our high school varsity. Now, if you have a combined event, again, you have to click the combined event. We're going to run this event. And here is your event running user face. This is what it looks like. So at this point, if you work with a Colorado timing system or a Daktronics timing system, you can connect it directly to that system. We run Colorado in Alexandria, and the two, I guess, technology pieces communicate very, very effectively and very seamlessly. There's a button called Connect to Timing System. Setting it up, connecting it to the Colorado, it's a little bit of a complicated process. I'm not going to get into that today, but it's very, very easy. Once you do it once, it's like, oh man, why weren't we doing this all the time? So the way it works is I have scoring pads, little electronic scoring pads. Those, when I throw a score, connect to the Colorado timing system. That timing system then communicates with eDive. And let's say Nick Cage did his 103C for 5.5, 5.5, 6. That data is going to come straight over to eDive and it will pre-populate right here. Judge 1, we want 5.5, 5.5, 6. It will already be in there. All you have to do is hit save in advance. And then you'll be on your next diver. And this is important to make sure that this diver matches the Colorado. But again, if you did that communication link, it should be all fine and all perfect. There is a button here that says auto advance when scores are all in. You can certainly click that. What I've noticed is it advances so quickly that you don't even get to see the scores come in. So I always just advance it on my own. I do not click that button just in case a judge needs to change a score. It's easier to do it manually than it is to go back and change it. So I choose not to do advance.
Now, Aaron, for a second, do you use the turn on live results?
So that's interesting. We don't, because my school's firewall is so intense that anything we would broadcast from a school computer out to the internet freely, it kind of puts up a red flag and says, you're not allowed to do this. This is not school allowed for whatever reason.
Sure.
I've tried to do it. And that's actually why I bought this computer, so that I could do it. And we just would run one eDive that's running the meet and another eDive that's sending the scores out online. But my school, like I said, the link just doesn't let us transmit online.
Right, right. And I have to say that if you can turn on live results,
yep, right
it doesn't, Aaron's pointing to it right now. It doesn't seem to bog down Wi-Fi connections too much from everything that I've seen. And parents have the opportunity to watch the meet in a semi-similar format to what we're seeing right here. And in terms of crowd engagement, I've seen meets where, yes, the scoreboard is up and everybody can see the scores, but the places are changing where that information, when live results are turned on, and that information is circulating, really helps get the crowd into it quite a bit more.
Well, and the other thing to mention too, live results, it's on cleanentries.com. We use this for our state high school meet and I love it. I pull it up on my phone while I'm on deck coaching and you can see who's where and what people are scoring and what where everything is sitting in the meet. Um, and it works out flawlessly. I mean, I love eDive, and all the capabilities are very seamless. From a high school perspective, this is the my preferred um, meet platform to run a meet on. There are two others that I know of. There is Dive Meets. A lot of USA diving meets are run on Dive Meets, and I know Division 1 and Division 2 meets are run on Dive Meets. That's a great system as well. I'm very familiar with how that system works. There's another system called Dive Live. It's fairly new. It's all app based. It's all done online. The divers submit their own lists on an app. The coaches can judge on an app. Everything is pretty cutting edge technology wise. It's just very new. So I have not played with that system really at all. I know a couple of the guys. I know the guy who created it and invented it, and he's pretty dang excited about it. And maybe in the future it'll be the go-to. But the reason I use eDive is that's what my high school state meet uses, and I wanted to be familiar with the system that we're using at our state meet, and that's where I coach is
Yep,
high school diving, and that's why I chose eDive.
I would agree. But I'll still have to take a look at that other third program that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
That's intriguing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They've been running it at AAU Nationals. I know the first year there was some growing pains, but it sounds like it's getting better all the time.
Okay,
So it's interesting to see the different platforms to run a diving meet.
for sure.
So I'm going to close out of this meet, and I'm just going to show you guys what a meet result may look like. So I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to find a report browser, and I'm going to look for a meet. Oh, we ran a team event. That was kind of fun. It's got to be a home meet. Otherwise, there won't be any data with it. So let's go the section 5A meet. We're doing boys 11 dives. Um, we're going to have detailed results. Let's see. Results official for completed events. Final place, that's fine. Oh, well, look at that. I wonder if I didn't complete the meet. There's a very good chance that happened. So here is just what a diving meet result could look like. This was from back in 2023, 2022 section meet. And so you can print this out and hand one to each coach. Once this is kind of finalized, you can also print all of the scores in the sheets already done from how the meet was scored. And you can see that right here. James scored all of these, and there's this final total. So you can go diver by diver and see and print all of these off and hand them to their coaches with a final results sheet as well. And it's as quick as once your meet is done and concluded, there's a button that says, complete this event. And once the event is complete, you can print your results like that. You do not have to wait around to recalculate scores unless there's a discrepancy that needs to be taken care of. Your meet results happen in seconds. And that's one of my favorite pieces. I was at a girls section meet last year, and it was an absolute nightmare. They were not running it on eDive, and it took 45 minutes for the official to recalculate all the scores by hand after the meet was over, just to confirm the results. And like I said, we were sitting there for 45 minutes, and it was like we want to go home. Like it's time to be done. It's time to go home. It's been a long day, and I was really frustrated with how that meet was run, but all of that could be avoided with eDive because these results happen so quickly. And once everything is printed and the coaches and athletes have their dive sheets that are scored and they have the results of the meet, we're ready to wrap up and we're ready to go home. So there's so many good things about eDive, from the setup being fairly easy, the changes of dives being easy, the printouts for the judges, or excuse me, for the officials, the printouts for the divers themselves, and then the meet results afterwards. Those are flawless, and then the meet just kind of runs itself if your Colorado timing system is set up and communicating, which that piece of it is also pretty seamless as well. So, Nate, anything to
Yeah.
add here tonight?
No, just that really with running a quick meet, and that's what a lot of divers, based on conversations that I've had, want is they want an efficient meet. They don't want a meet to take, 2, 3 hours when it could be done in an hour and a half. And eDive is really, and because the scoring is automatic, at most somebody would have to be at the scores for scores. And like Aaron is showing right now, saving and advancing, what he is doing right now would be if you're not connected to a system, Colorado or Dectronic table is doing what Aaron's doing right now as the announcer is going through it, clicking save and advance, and you're getting your results incredibly quickly. Most officials at this point that I've encountered, if they know that you're running eDive for each one of the divers lists, if there's not, they're good with taking a look at that. And then if there hasn't been any major issues, when the final result is done, their math is all right, and that this program works. It's been tested thousands of times, and it is, in my opinion. So
I'm going to get all the way to the end here and try to just show you what it finally looks like here.
you're going to get to that post results message that scares a lot of people.
Yep. Oh,
Yep.
I forgot to. Been a couple where I only entered 2 scores and then it defaults to 0 if you hit save in advance. So there's our last dive right there. So here it looks. Here it is. All the divers have been complete. You can choose to post the results by selecting yes, or you can do it later. Would you like to post the results? Yes, I would. Awesome. Here's your results. Would you like to post them? Last little check. Yes, I would. Results have been posted. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now we go back to our reports browser and we can look at results.
Oh, you're pulling section 5A again.
Oh, thank you. You got to
Yep.
make sure you're on the right meet, and I was not on the right.
I have to say I've made that mistake more times than not.
So here's our results. We had Tony Hawk in first. You can see the scores there. Obviously, I was just clicking a whole bunch of random buttons, but it this is what I print along with their diving sheets when it's all said and done. And as you can see, as this pops up nice and slow, it's all scores are entered in the document themselves. So if we go to that guy who took first place, even with a 0 on his first dive, looks like he still was the champion with 283.2. So, like I said, once this meet concluded, you can post those results, you can start printing things, and you're on your way home.
Yep.
All right, let's go here. So that's all we had for tonight. Just a crash course in eDive, kind of my preferred meet running program. Yeah, hopefully this was beneficial and helpful. Thanks, Nate, for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. Have a good night.
All right. Yeah, you too.